Okay, I'll call the meeting to order.
All right, at 4:07, go ahead and take roll. Mamu. Dada,
Here.
Bulls,
Here,
Huggins, here, Kelleher.
She's
Absent. Mills,
Yes.
Shay,
Yes.
Shire,
Yes.
and Mullen.
Here.
All right,
before we move on to the land acknowledgement, I'll entertain a motion to allow virtual participation completely for trustee Dada.
So moved. Second. Mills and Shay.
thank you. No,
Sedan.
the man is back in time. All right, so. Dada, oh, she can't vote,
vote.
sorry, right, Bulls,
Yes,
Huggins, aye, Mills.
Yes.
Shay,
Yes.
Shire,
Yes.
Wallen.
Yes.
All right, allow virtual participation passes.
thank you very much.
Hey, I'm official.
Okay,
Dr. Wall,
before colonization and the settlement by people of European descent, the place we know as Evanston was home of the Potawatomi, Adawa, and Ojibwe tribes, also known as the Council of the Three Fires. It also served as an important crossroads and meeting place for a number of other indigenous tribal nations, including the Ho-Chunk, Illinois, Anoka, Kickapoo, Miami, Menominee, Peoria, and Sac and Fox nations. We acknowledge and honor the original people of this land, as well as the indigenous people that still call this area home, and support their continued work for justice, self-determination, and sovereignty. In so doing, we honor indigenous protocol and remind ourselves and our community that land acknowledgements do not exist in the past tense.
thank you very much. There is no old business, so we'll move on to new business.
Citizen.
Oh, I forgot citizen comment. Is there citizen comment? No. Womp womp.
Wanted to make sure it was
Maybe she
officially
had
noted.
Thank you.
For sad Trump though.
Mhm.
So just like.
Wait,
There we go.
You guys are extraordinary human beings.
I think you've got that, Sophia.
That's awesome.
It's on the homepage.
I love it.
Alright. Please, I'll share that app with us.
Oh my gosh.
That's our old business. Share that app. So we'll move on to new business. I'll entertain a motion to swap A and B. I'd like to start with the RFB. Is there a motion to swap A and B?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Mills and Shay.
Mills and Shire. Swap. Dada,
Yes.
Bulls.
Yes.
Huggins, yes, Mills.
Yes.
Shay,
Yes.
Shire,
Yes.
and Wallen.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you very much. Megan Shea, trustee Shea, please start us off.
So I combined all of the work that we've done to create an RFP for this, so building on the work that happened for the interim. So I have a draft that I wanted to share with everybody, and then I figured we could talk through it, if that's okay.
Okay,
So let me email that to you all. I'm so sorry. I feel like I rushed here and I was not prepared for this, so hang on, let me
do you need
send
a
it.
minute?
I just need a minute to send it to you.
No problem.
Thank you, thank you.
Did you hear that? Sure. Did you hear that, Kimberly?
That's a roof.
What's the move? Getting that snap like
Oh, I know.
Oh, they
And
work
then
just like
like,
that.
I looked, Heather's door was open,
The good
and
weather.
you could just see somebody walk by themselves. And I was like, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yay.
They're coming in.
Yeah, friendly.
Yeah, I get it.
No, but a lot of.
Given how it's
people
been.
who are members
No,
are
that's true.
members of the organization, so it was, yeah.
Megan, do you want to send it to me to like project on the screen?
Yeah, that's your own feed.
We can
No,
really
no,
do that,
but,
yeah.
it's another one. Okay, so you don't
I'll
get-
send, I'm just sharing the doc, like, so I'll send it to you as well. Although, Heather, I may need to Yeah, I think that would be good. Well, I don't actually know. Hang on a second. Let me figure this out. real quick. So- Let's do it today. Okay, I think I just sent this to all of you I just shared
Got
the
it.
doc with you. I'm trying to think of what would be best, Heather, because I'll probably want to edit as we get feedback. But I could just send you a copy of the draft to share on the screen. What do you think? Is that easier?
You mean rather than share the doc so that you're editing?
It's probably, I don't know if it's helpful or better or worse if I'm just maybe we just share the draft of it as we're discussing. What do you think?
You could share the draft with me and I can project.
So that's shown. Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you. Okay, I think I emailed it to you. Let me know if you got it. Okay. So, we can walk through this. I don't know if there are any specific questions or places you all have questions about. We can really start at the top. I know we talked about, obviously, we want this person to be full-time at the library here. We have kind of in that first introduction section is the description of Evanston and really the mission. So we kind of tied in some of the strategic plan that we started to build on in the last last few years. Little bit of description of the board and how we work in terms of the locations and then core values. We have here also, we have put this in the job description for the interim when we were working on that before. The American Library Association's Equity of Access Statement and Freedom to Read Statement. I have it kind of like live links to that, and we can do that here if we need to, up to you all. If we don't feel like that's necessary for this RFP, that's also fine.
The only thing that I immediately noticed, which I don't know if it's true or not, is North Shore isn't called North Shore anymore. It's called
Endeavor.
Endeavor, right?
Endeavor Health,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Endeavor Health.
Yeah.
got it, yep. I think it needs a space between health and system.
And then I did have a question.
Yeah.
About the compensation.
Yeah.
Do we normally include compensation in the RFP for the job?
Yeah, I had a question about that whole section, because for the interim, we were gonna provide it separately, but we also hadn't developed it yet, and in the meantime, we've done a lot of work to develop that, so. I don't know that. What we're purchasing is what's in the RFP, what we're purchasing is search services, so I don't know that we need to put out the ED. job description right now.
Mhm.
That's making something public too early in the process. We can provide that to the search firm, who will then make it public when they go off with the search. That's not what we're asking people to react to at this point.
Yeah,
So maybe take out the compensation, just all kind of.
no, I mean, the whole job description, like the whole, like we can provide that to the search firm when we hire the right search firm, we can say at a high level, here, we're hiring for an executive director for the Evanston Public Library. And then sketch out some thumbnail aspects of what we're looking for. But the full job description is something we would provide to them at the point that they're hired. I don't think it's a big, mystery, like we're hiring an executive director for a public library for the city of Evanston. Are you a search firm that can provide that?
yeah,
On a certain timeline and, that it's like, full-time in person. Some of these other things, like what we're purchasing is the search and the management of the search process, right? That's that's what they're responding to.
yeah.
I agree with that. My only question, and Megan, you might know this, is how much does the search firm need to know about the specs? Right, so it's like, I'm purchasing, a painter, they wanna know like how much wall I'm gonna paint.
Yeah.
So like,
Mhm.
does knowing anything about the position help them appropriately scope?
Megan, before you answer that, I have a question that's aligned with it,
Mhm.
is that in my previous experience, search firms often want to rewrite the job description.
Yeah,
And so, like, how do we balance providing information about what we need without making them part of what we're purchasing from them will also be their insight into the job description?
Yeah.
Because there may be things that they say we should add or take away or whatever, because that's,
Yeah, and I don't want that to be public when that's not even the final product.
right.
So that's why I think we should just take it up a level.
so from this draft, Michelle, when you say kind of take that out, so are you thinking like, the sort of role parameters, just taking all that out and then kind of the candidate profile piece, or what are you thinking
I
in
think
this draft, that needs to kind of go?
I think summarizing the key responsibilities and the key competencies.
Mhm.
And then saying, well. I think the key things we care about is we're looking for somebody who's got some of these key competencies. And then the what is important too, for them understanding what they're responding to, but putting that into. The rest of it is.
So less.
Yeah, less. Yeah, that's, yes. Cause we're not asking somebody to come forward and throw their hat in the ring right now, which they could if they see this, and it's gonna. Be talking past the search, right?
Okay.
So.
Yep.
I think just, yeah, less information, But the rest of it, section 3 is, I think, the really important stuff, and we just wanna make sure there's enough information there for somebody to be able to provide a responsible. Response, not have questions. Be able to be thorough in what they're, putting a budget together for, and so I think, I need to read that a little bit more carefully.
Yeah.
But I think the proposal contents, it looks like you summarized from before.
Totally.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
I
All right.
figured we would just.
Yeah.
Do as much as possible.
I mean, because I think in going through that whole process with the interim search, we got, we had a couple. Things that we thought needed clarification internally, right? And I think if we correct for those things in terms of like, what did we mean by this or whatever?
Right, I think one of those is like references, I think we
Yeah.
have at
Yes.
least 3 written references, I
Yeah.
think we wanna say.
Or do we
We
want
want letters
that,
of recommendation.
if that's what we want,
Yeah.
or do we not?
Or do we
Like,
not?
Or
I
is
think-
it
or do
just
we
the
refer-
contact information
Yeah.
that we would then
Right.
follow up on?
Yeah,
right?
so like whatever the board wants to ask for there, and I would include everybody to, make it as easy to score as possible, and if expediency is part of it here, like you wouldn't probably. Reach out to somebody until somebody gets to like a final round in the process, but you would check the references, so whatever you want there, like just make it clear to everybody. So that it's being provided and scored appropriately, but that was one thing we learned.
Mhm.
I have to go back and look at my notes.
I know, I was thinking too about that,
I'll look, I had pretty detailed notes because we had to roll it all up. But I'll do that while we're talking.
yeah, I think we talked a little bit about, the kind of what are those, the pass fail gate is the one that especially needs to be super clear, right?
Mhm.
So, if we're, I think we talked about having an agreement on the location, the clear free fee structure, the three references, a structured bias mitigated evaluation approach, and then demonstrated experience on public library executive searches. Now, do we want those to still be consistent? Do we want to change that at all? But it's about what is that and then defining it so we know for sure this is what this really means when we're looking at, the RFPs.
So maybe the next step is for us to like ask that directly, do a little straw poll around, or not really a poll, but the expectations around. Do we want to remove that? Or do we want to change it? If so, how would we do so? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
I haven't had enough caffeine today, so so I'll just go around. Katie, what are your thoughts around the references, or not references, but recommendation versus reference? Do they have to have library experience in search?
I think that, uh. When when I did some references for the previous RFP. I'm not really sure that I learned anything from those experiences, from those calls, but.
Yeah,
Um, like. I couldn't have found.
Yeah.
From, I don't know that it really enhanced my understanding of these companies any, like.
Michelle?
Can I remind everybody that the reason we didn't ask for it last time was because we were very worried about our timeline and how in narrowing the field too much. But we don't, because we had a boom, boom, boom timeline. We were
That's
trying to
true.
like move this forward in like a 45 to 90-day
But
period.
now we're talking about,
We have a little bit more breathing room this time to get it done right. And I would ask the board to seriously consider having a search firm that does have library experience
oh, yeah,
to get this done right. That's the question on the table, right?
Yep.
Yes, I mean, I think that library experience in search on this is gonna be really important. And I think that it narrows the scope in such a way that it doesn't waste other offers' time who wouldn't be qualified if we're not gonna seriously consider that.
great, because we did have a couple, well, we did have one last RFP that had no library experience, and that was.
Yeah, it just, we don't wanna waste people's
Don't
time.
waste people's time putting that
I
together.
would also say that if you have library, if the firm or individual has library search experience, that stands for reference.
I think so
Right,
too.
because you can look
personally.
at what was the success of the person that was placed, before even talking to anyone, you can sort of say like, there's public record of like.
Yeah,
That person stayed, is still there, or whatever it is, so I think asking for their track record on library search, so like, tell us the searches you've done and the placements you made. That would suffice for me.
I kind of felt the same way after having, that was my first experience really calling people to discuss things, and.
Yeah,
I mean, it was kind of an entertaining experience when we ended up knowing people in kind, but.
yeah,
Other than that, it was like, I didn't. Like you said, especially from Koya, that was the one I was calling about previously. I feel like they'd included so much on their, on what they provided already, that the calls didn't add anything to it. If that,
And does it need to be public library experience?
that is a complete, I can safely say that's a very different animal from
Right.
academic.
yeah.
I would think we would want public,
I would think so too, because
but I just wanted
Yeah.
to make sure we're all.
my workplace operates very differently.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Public
Yeah.
library, yeah.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that? Repo, do you have something specific?
No, I think I agree if we went through already and felt that the way it's stated now as references is not going to be helpful, but just thinking about what is the way that we show that they can show that they have library experience, right? If it's validation or some sort, or if it's like a list of track records or a portfolio of leadership, of library leadership, something that we can check against that if the references the way they are right now don't work, I think that's fine, as long as it's explicit that we want someone with public library experience. And how are we going to, what are we going to use to validate that?
So do we want two and three, or I'm sorry, two and six, relevant experience and three case studies and three written references? Do we want both of those items?
I think we can strike references.
Yeah, I think so too. Does
If
everybody
the
agree?
case examples name, and maybe we need to be specific, like it's not a generic case, like
Yeah.
I did a search for someone in the
Right.
metropolitan area that it's like. We want the names of the community,
Name of the
the
yeah.
library.
Yeah,
The position title, maybe it was a director or an assistant director, like whatever the senior.
yeah,
And to Michelle's point, I think the more specific we can be, the less we sort of, it helps narrow, like, we're not wasting anybody's time, the
Mhm.
potential respondent nor ours in the review.
Mhm. So I just want to be clear, we're thinking about on the proposal contents to get rid of number 6, the references.
yes.
And everyone's feeling good about that. Okay. And then Victoria just talked a little bit about speak specific on the 3 brief, these like case examples that we have at number 2.
Uh-huh.
Is there something specific you want there?
I was thinking like the name of the library or community. The timeline, how long it took to make the placement.
Mhm.
Can I jump back to references? 'Cause
Yeah.
I was just going back and forth in my head about.
Yeah.
Why, why
Yeah.
we should or should not include them.
Uh-huh.
And I guess my perspective is that with although the case studies, they're coming at it from their angle, they're going to present the best case that they can, right? But the references are actually from somebody else's perspective. And so I just wonder, I'm not sure that I want to lose here, like, a successful search doesn't mean that it was a great search. And so, and so
I
I
think you're
wonder.
making a really good point, and I don't think that we should not check references, and so I think that needs to be built into our agreements somewhere in here. There needs to be language saying that we can cancel the search at any time, and that we will check references as part of this before an award is made. Because I think I wouldn't wanna not check references, whether they provide them as part of a complete package or not,
Mhm.
we will ask for references. But we can either require them or not, but I agree with you 100% that the references need to be checked.
I can.
And that we would either, they can provide them or we can use our common sense and find out where they have placed people. Like, I wouldn't want to be limited to contacting who they give, like, if we know they placed somebody at Glenbrook, I'd want to be able to call, or Glenview or whatever, I'd want to be able to call Glenview Public Library, right? And just like talk to our people there.
I can live with that, I just feel like we do need to state somewhere.
Yeah.
That we would
100%.
be
Yeah.
checking references.
We need some language in here too, saying like we can reserve the right to cancel at any time, et cetera, but that's.
I think. So when this is tricky, how to phrase this. We had to, we got 3 RFPs for the most recent one that we did. 2 had to be, like, couldn't even be reviewed because they were missing the 3 written references. So I guess, I agree, we would check, like, I think that's a good distinction that we just made there. We're not saying we won't check references, but we're talking, I want to clarify, we're talking about what's required for like the gateway, the
Yeah,
gate review.
yeah.
I think dropping it off of gate review is probably fine. Because I mean, if you're a long-established company, you're going to have a slate with that. Um, if you're a smaller company, you may not have quite as many written references. They may not like keep, and that's so much time that's required to keep up on that and like check back in with those references if it's over. Like,
We already know who the like
we
five.
know who
people
the
that's gonna
established ones
respond.
are, who have a portfolio and a staff member who manages keeping all of that stuff current.
Yeah.
It's not necessary. I think it's kind of old fashioned. To add, like I think you're automatically giving preferment to the longer established ones who have the deeper pockets to maintain staff and keep all that stuff up.
But I think the thing to keep in mind is that we already know who would be able to respond to this RFP. There are not hundreds of organizations doing national library
Right,
searches.
there are not.
They're just not. There's like five. And so of those five, they'll decide whether or not they want to participate. So
So in service of that, though, we still have to be clear and treat it like,
This is right, we
to
will,
be fair to those
There's-
people and anyone else who wants to.
there should be language that, of course, just because we're not requiring them for the gate check.
Michelle, I had a question about, you were talking about this idea of having somewhere like. We reserve the right to cancel this search anytime, we'll check references. Is that something you think would be in the RFP or more like in the agreement we sign? Okay. Cool.
Just.
Sorry, I realized the way I sort of noodled around too made it sound like. Anyway.
So any other reasons why we feel like we would need or not need I guess those three references in the pass-fail gate?
What's a good
Are we-
reason to have them?
You
in the
know,
past?
yeah, I think the question is, are we all comfortable taking that out as a part of how we decide who moves through?
I'm certainly comfortable figuring that out.
Esther, how about you?
I'm fine as long as we document, like we said.
Yeah, we will do that.
Right.
Aripo?
Yeah, I'm fine with it because it says here step 2 and references are in step 2, right? So we're just saying take it out of step 1 and put it in step 2.
Or out of step
Uh,
6? And
take-
sort of having it in step 2.
Right, like
So-
we're saying that. So what I was understanding was that we would take it out. It was not a requirement for the pass fail gate, but it would be something we would take, like
We would
if
score.
we would score,
Right. So out of step
Right.
1 and keep it in step 2.
right?
There's also one other piece that we haven't really talked about. Is step 4 is going to be very, very difficult for us to get.
Step 4.
Wait, what's
I don't-
step 4?
It means, on number 4 under section 5.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh,
Oh,
Equity, fairness, and evidence-based
I-
practice.
to come back to you too.
The last time we did this, the firm
oh.
specifically told us, we don't do that.
Mhm.
And so we went with,
Wait, you mean the last time being
yes,
the first time?
the first time.
The last time when we got the interim approaches, I think that I was gonna bring this up, that everyone's scoring on this was kind of like,
Yeah.
mid.
Right, mid.
And no, I wanted to ask here what people, I don't wanna cut you off, were you done?
No.
Okay.
So to the earlier question of the established organizations that do library searches as a group do not appear to value that. That is not a part of their practice. So we would, it's kind of like what my grandmother would say, 6 in one hand, half dozen of the other. If we're gonna say that our priority is somebody with a lot of experience in library searches, then we are not going to find them with deep experience around equity, fairness, and evidence-based practice. That's just not gonna happen.
I think what I saw in the interim, response to the interim RFP, folks naming things, naming certain things, and those things may not be the most fully robust incarnation of fairness. And
I'm not talking about the interim, I'm talking about literally the
Yeah,
actual
yeah.
research. All of the established like, we do library search all day, every night. We're like, this is having this in your request makes us say we don't want to do it. Because that is not how we do this, John. And having it there is going to make it difficult for you to find, like, we talked to all the biggies
Mhm.
and they were like, yeah, we don't do that. That's not a part of our
Can I
practice.
see a difference between what you asked for last time and then what's written right here for number 4? Because what's written here for number 4 right now, I can tell you, at least in the last few years.
Yeah,
This is like standard practice for search.
That was
Like, this is
kind,
like, if you're not doing this, then you're just racist. Like, I don't know, what to tell- like, this is, like what,
it is. So remember, I also talked to people doing the interim search
right?
and they said, we don't do this.
I mean, this is just like,
I have reservations about removing it.
I don't wanna remove it,
I'm not saying that we need to remove it. I'm just saying be aware that like what we assume, like none of us, well, except you, none of us are librarians. So like, we don't know the library world in the way that librarians know the library world. And while that may be important in the library world, library search firms may not be sorting for that.
okay, so what I guess. The interview training might be the one that's the challenge. The bias mitigation and transparency are just like. You can't not do you might get sued if you don't do those things, frankly. The interview training, I wonder those are the things we even got. Hung up on with the last round of scoring where people were like, this is just not on the level, and which was fair. I don't know if you have thoughts about that, but the interview training is tough and is very time consuming. And I
Yeah.
think the
Yeah.
last time I came on late in the search process last time,
Yeah.
that was, if I remember, what was. Kind of where
yeah.
was meeting the road on
Yeah.
that part of things too. So I wonder if. When we ask for that, what are we asking for? What is this board viewing as what would be. Insufficient, sufficient, and amazing for interview training?
So are we asking them to do, like, I think maybe we should look a little higher, like, what are we imagining the search to operate like? Like, the previous, and by previous, I don't mean interim, I mean the last ED had a very high level of community engagement. There were previous trustees, current trustees, employees doing interviews, but I thought our vision now was not doing any of that and really just allowing a search to do a very traditional search,
Mhm.
in which case there would need to be interviewer training.
Right, that's
Right.
true.
Right.
So,
And the reason for a traditional search is that we feel that the information gathered in that more intensive community input process still holds.
yes,
It's in a short enough period of time close
Yep,
to that,
agreed.
that information is still current.
yep,
And you have some clearly identified competencies, somebody has to have a track record of having experience. Showing concern for
Mhm.
DEIB related processes and practices and so on, and experience with
Yeah.
it, that is competency. So you're outsourcing that to people who are already trained.
right,
Yeah, but that will also
theoretically.
Yeah.
make it move more quickly.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So I think maybe for this one, what we're doing is asking for what their processes are internally to address that.
Right.
And I've done that with search firms that we've hired too, to say,
Yeah.
walk me through what you guys do to address these things for your own staff.
Yep,
And which is something, they can either be sufficient or not sufficient. For us, and our scorecard should address that too, but if they're not training our staff and doing. These things internally, it does make it a lot less unachievable, I think, for a firm.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
I mean, maybe it's a part of organizational description,
Yeah.
like, their approach. Oh, I don't know what to say there, but I don't think it's concrete steps for, even, to be clear, I personally value that.
Right.
Like, I just realized what it sounded like. I
Right.
personally value that, but I don't think the firms will have that. So we need to have a different thing that gets to that point in organizational description from my
Um,
lens.
what if it's something like, under organizational description, firm background, ownership and project staff approach to structuring a skills-based assessment process. You know, something like that, so it's more about,
Leveraging evidence-based practices for bias mitigation. And competency models for hiring, something like that, where it's clear this is about. Evidence-based practices for doing this. Reducing risk into the process. But I agree with Tracy that I think it's about the organizational description and kind of the core ethos of the organization. When you're doing recruitment like this, if this isn't a core part of who you are as an organization, then it's probably not gonna work. Because it is so core to what we're asking for.
But what if it's not? So. I think the question that we need to ask ourselves is, could we hire a firm that does not loudly and proudly share its practices around belonging, but still could theoretically find us a great person? Do they need to have those practices in order to find the right fit for us?
Do you mean, do they culturally need to, in their organization?
Yeah.
Have like a DEIB initiative for our staff?
Yeah,
Oh.
Mm.
because I mean, we don't need to
That's
get
a
in their
different
business.
thing than what we're worried about asking. How do they use like clear evidence-based practices for designing a process around? Bias mitigation, these other things are really, like in the literature around hiring practices, there's like a, a full evidence base for why you do this to get equitable outcomes in
Mhm.
hiring. And we're asking for that, for sure, but
Right.
then like, are you our people is like a different question. And
Yeah.
I'm saying like, the research says that this is what you should be doing. To get the kind of outcomes that we're looking for as an organization. And are you doing that? Like, we wanna make sure your
I
candidate
totally,
panels are.
I totally understand, and this wasn't that long ago, it was 2.5 years ago.
Yeah,
And then a couple months ago, and I was told definitively that they don't do that. They're like, well, I'll find you an executive director, like. What I heard personally, and I'd be interested to hear what you say, because you talked to some references. And I don't know, but firms that are focused on library searches. Focus on these things in the same way that maybe other firms might. Because I wonder if now this is me, making stuff up. Is it because the pool is smaller and that there's only like X number of jobs, there's 5 jobs a year, so they don't have to focus on these kinds of things.
Right.
Like, I don't know, but it was very explicit that they were like one firm told me, we don't go in for this DEI stuff. And which I was like, oh, okay. Like, I mean, they're entitled to say whatever they want, but they're in that 5. So
The person that I spoke to regarding GSG Koya had worked with them for.
let's not talk about who
Yeah,
it was
sorry,
specifically.
sorry. Oh, sorry.
Well,
There was one person we were calling for though, so anyway, when I talked to this person, they had been working with hiring an ED for the YWCA here in Evanston. And they had also worked with them for the Evanston Community PCF previously. And they had said in one of the searches, I think it was the YWCA one, they had not been happy with the diversity of candidates, and so they requested that they go back and look more deeply, and they did. So they were open to, like, I think that that's the other thing too, is if you're not happy with what someone's doing, tell them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like nowadays too,
I mean, the other thing I would say about this. Is that we need to be specific about what we're looking for, because it has to be on our scorecard. So
That's true.
are we looking for them to have their own, like, DEIB work group or whatever it is, like, what would show evidence of what we're asking for? It can't be vibey.
Yeah,
So, I don't know. Like, what shows that they care about this issue, and does that, so effectively, does that matter to us? Is what we need to figure out, because if it matters to us, okay, great, what's the evidence
Yeah.
for showing up on this issue?
I would be shocked if we were able to find, like, again, we already know who the big firms are. And we know what they care, how they present. We can
Right.
go look at the previous proposals even and say like, oh, okay, so this is what we told them we wanted, and this is how they responded to it. Like, it just seems like, why put it on there if we don't intend to actually,
So,
Yeah, I just, I hear you, I just, feel that by fully removing it, we're kind of in dangerous territory, given the current state of the world.
yeah,
And that I would rather us stand by
excuse me.
our cultural beliefs.
I-
And impress it upon them to at least consider that these are things that are important to this community.
I have a question, or I guess I agree with Esther. I think that I think we need to think about how to reword it to really show what we're trying to say. Like concrete steps might be like more off-putting, and we don't need the interviewer training part, but I do think that being able to like wordsmith this particular point to make sure that it's not lost in the proposal. Because I do think that it's important to us as a community, and that's what we want, at the end of the day.
What if we have something here where we say, we have kind of this strategic plan, right? And we have these core, values from the strategic plan. What if we have something that says, based on our strategic values, tell us how you approach a search utilizing these values? Like, give us examples of what you have done.
Yeah,
from
see that,
these, you know what I mean, or something where we,
We still have to figure out how we're gonna score it, though.
yeah,
Everybody
that's,
likes
that's my
score.
question. I'm still hung up on how we score this because. Yeah, I feel like it's gonna be squidgy no matter what, because I'm not sure what metric we use to, aside from what you just stated, asking for very specific examples. I'm not sure how. Yeah, what are the specific, what is the evidence I'm looking for to score, I guess, I don't know. So what are we,
But I mean, that's
So,
the metric that we have. Sorry, I was gonna say that's the metric we have to figure out. We have to figure out either which way, right? Like, so it's once we decide what each of the parts are, we have to say what's a really good answer, what's in the middle answer, what's a bad answer, right? For each of them. Regardless of what we decide. And I like the way that Megan put it, like, why couldn't it say number 4, alignment with current strategic plan, and how do you align with these strategic plan points? And that's part of their
Ah,
And then I think in terms of metrics, then we can judge it based on how specific they were.
Yeah.
And if they were able to substantiate what it is that they are saying and then demonstrate a success.
So the way we had this in the scorecard for the last round was, this is the way it's got operationalized, was excellent, was concrete bias mitigation steps such as calibration, structured questions, consistent scoring, broad sourcing, transparent pipeline reporting. A 3, so mid acceptable, but like middle of the pack, was commits to equitable process and describes some concrete practices such as structured questions, standardized scoring, modest pipeline transparency plan. What's unacceptable, or evidence, we didn't have unacceptable, evidence to look for was DEI practices as process controls, interviewer training, pipeline metrics approach, and accessibility practices. So that was how we set it up the first time for the scorecard evidence. We could modify that if that doesn't land well for people, but I don't know if getting into their company's like groups or how they reflect their own values and their organizational practices.
I'm
feels-
not worried
Okay.
about that. I'm saying they told us that we couldn't, the big ones told us we were not participating in interviews. That they didn't want our interview questions, that they were gonna write the job description, like. It is a very different world than the world that I come from, where, so. Like,
And those are all, I think, pretty standard practices because they want alignment through the process. They want the job description to look a certain way, so they attract certain
Yeah.
candidate. I think those are all pretty,
Some of that has to do with just standard HR practices.
yeah, and normal.
no,
But
like, it's not standard to, like, if you are looking for a unicorn, you're not gonna find it asking for a zebra. So I think what we need to like be honest with ourselves about, or be really explicit and clear, is that we are not looking for a unicorn. We are looking for a horse. Which, it might be a very lovely horse, but it's not a unicorn, it's not a zebra, it's just a horse. And if we're just looking for a horse, we need to make sure that our RFP looks for horses.
Right.
Mm.
Yes, I see what you're saying. You're not describing the uniqueness or specialness of anything you're saying. It's a different animal.
Yeah, it's,
Yes,
it's,
yes, yeah.
and not to say, I mean, all the firms are practiced at doing this one thing, finding
Yeah.
library directors.
Yeah.
And they've gotten very good at that. So why are we gonna try to reinvent
Right.
that for them? I don't know that we should be doing that.
I don't hear that. We are trying to do it. I think we're just asking how they do it. Cause they're gonna do it,
Yeah,
so that we have evidence that the way they do it isn't contrary to our values. It's not perpetuating harm, it's not.
And I think also,
Exclusionary.
this is 15 points out of 100, and
Yeah.
so people either get points on this or they don't,
Yeah.
and it's. At the end of the day, if all the firms that respond get 0 points, the playing
Then
field's
they're
still
playing field.
level, and then the max points is 85, so it doesn't do any harm to have it. It's, somebody's gonna get some points, and maybe that boosts them up in some other category, I don't know.
okay.
But I prefer to leave it, I think the criteria we had in the previous scorecard is good and, but I wrote it. But it's edit it away if people don't like it and like add something else you do care about, it's fine. I'm just saying, I think that it's objective and that's what matters.
Okay,
I like what's there. I think maybe we might, based on this conversation, clarity about interviewer training, so that, do we mean train? Interviewers who are not within the search firm team, or are we asking them to describe how they ensure that their staff are trained on non-bias interview practices?
I think that's what we would be, yes, that's like one example that, but yes.
wait, say that again?
How they train their staff on
Yeah,
anti-bias.
Right, not. the
Whoever's doing
service.
the interviews, that they're trained on it in some way.
Mhm.
Which is just really like, very core to the whole thing.
Mhm.
Okay,
Just really looking for some like anti-bias, like training techniques, blah, 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 like,
but to your point, if no one has it, then it's neutral.
it's neutral, yes.
That's
Okay.
true.
So, I'm a little lost now. So are we, keeping 4 in? Is that what we're talking about now?
I think we're keeping 4 in.
Okay, oh, we are?
Wait,
I thought we were moving into.
I thought we were
Part of the
yeah.
organizational description, yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna get rid of number 4,
Yep,
but in the language for number 1.
I mean, we could do either, actually, like, sorry, so we could say. Right now, I mean, the way we just talked about it. I think we all kind of landed on, it's fine to leave it in, so long as we're operationalizing it in the scorecard the same way as we did before.
yes,
I don't
which
feel
is-
good about taking it out.
Yeah, I think leaving it as 4 calls it out as a separate independent thing, which is. Not holding it up to something else, and I think. It's still scored the same way it was before, which is as its own item. I don't know, I'm flexible, I'm not feeling like I'm gonna die on a hill over this, I just think leaving it as its own item calls it out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
are we removing concrete? Is that, I think that's where we were having the issue was the concrete steps. So we wanna have steps, but we wanted to proceed with caution.
Or maybe it's methods or process for, practices for.
Thoughtful approaches.
And removing interviewer training.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think in the scoring metric, like concrete gives you the highest number of points, but we don't have to have concrete, like. we
Doesn't
could
have
change
to.
it. Yeah, we could say a credible.
So right now, what we're talking about is practices for bias mitigation and transparency. That's it.
Evidence-based, let's say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Practices for evidence-based bias mitigation and transparency.
Or just
Evidence-based
evidence-based
practices.
practices.
Got it. Uh-huh. For bias mitigation and transparency.
Yes.
And that's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, we decided on the proposal contents that we would take out references.
That was what I thought we were talking about.
Okay. Is everything else here in the proposal contents? Any questions, thoughts?
There was one area just for consistency, we said champion for DEAI, and we have historically said DEIB.
That's true.
The other thing that I would say, and not sure how to phrase this, but I do not think that this individual will be responsible without having experience with a labor workforce.
Mm.
Yeah,
So that's part of the specs that we do want to include.
So,
I'm proposing that, I guess.
yeah, and you're talking about like relevant experience? Or where?
I'm trying to think if it's a key competency or a experience or requirement. What do people think about that? And like, how would we operationalize that either into a competency or we want somebody to have been effective in that kind of environment?
In the minimum requirements, bullet 4, we have demonstrated experience working effectively with an economically and ethnically diverse staff and community, and we could just sort of add and with a unionized labor.
Yeah, it could fit there.
This is just where we're giving the firm a snapshot. Of
Yeah, I
what
think
you're
that-
gonna be looking for.
Yeah, I
This-
think
the
that,
specs.
I mean,
Yeah.
the firm's gonna get, we can give them on the side the full sketch of our job description, like that doesn't have to go in the RFP publicly. We'll have an exchange of materials with them anyway, that isn't going out in the public materials. But I think wherever I don't care if it's in the public thumbnail sketch, but I think I'm just saying, I think that this person will not be effective without that kind of
Yeah.
successful.
It's in the job description.
So do we want to have this sitting in this RFP draft in this kind of minimum requirements as a kind of like previous experience?
placing someone in unionized environments. Also,
Maybe 2 to 5 years of experience of engaging with the public and leading or managing and
environments under collective bargaining
yeah,
agreements.
there you go.
And I just want to name that it sounds like you guys are talking about it from 2 different places, so you said experience placing someone in a unionized workforce, so that's a qualification of the firm. And
Right.
Michelle, I hear you describing a qualification of
Yes.
the.
I'm talking about
ED.
the ED.
Right, but
You're.
we're talking to them about what kind of EDs they place, right?
Oh, I'm saying that, so Megan's got this job description written up, which I'm saying, earlier at the beginning, we condensed it anyway. For
Yeah.
What's in the public RFP, but I'm
Uh-huh.
saying whether this is public or not, I'm just sort of saying for the group here, I don't think this individual, the ED,
Ah.
the permanent ED will be successful without that kind of experience.
For sure.
So your point about. Does the search firm needs to be aware of that?
Yeah.
Do they need to have experience placing somebody? With that kind of experience, maybe, possibly, but also they certainly need to have the awareness that that person probably won't have success without that kind of experience. So Megan was adding, I think, to the section C minimum requirements, 2 to 5 years of experience engaging with the public. And like using your language,
Under with the public and, I don't know if we were saying environments under collective bargaining agreements. That's what I have, but
I think we want engaging with the public and with staff under collective bargaining agreements.
in, yeah,
And then your point about the search firm, like, how do we feel about whether or not?
having the search firm share with us experiences they've had successfully doing this.
And does that matter?
I feel like it's been pointed out in this conversation that there's only X number of firms that
Right.
do this and do this well. We may not need to further narrow. Like, or explicitly state, unless we think that that's we would not ever want to hire a firm that did not have experience placing someone in such a workforce environment. If we feel like there's no way we would want to hire a search firm who's never placed someone like that, then we shouldn't include.
It doesn't, I don't know if it matters to me if they have experience, because we're outsourcing them. Measuring, does the person have this experience and were they effective? So. They need to figure out, does Tracy have experience leading in an environment where she has managed a workforce like this? Yes or no, and was she effective? Maybe, check your references, find out. And then tell us yes or no, great, you did your job. I don't know that requires a ton of experience, otherwise we'd have to go through each individual bullet and say they have experience. Figuring out each of these things, right? I don't think that's special.
Okay,
I have to step away from work.
okay, I realize in scope of work. I just wanna make sure that we all have the same understanding. We're doing kind of like an old school search process where we tell a firm, go out and find us somebody. And they're gonna show up with 3 candidates and we're gonna be like, yep, that's the one, right? Is that everybody's understanding?
Yeah.
So when you say that, what's the process for saying, yes, that's the one, or is the board re-interviewing 3 individuals? And then what's the process for that? I mean, the search firm will need to walk the board through that, but
Yeah.
there is like then a second process to
Mhm.
doing that.
So then some changes would need to be made to that scope of work. In that, there won't be interviewing teams. There won't be training.
Right.
There won't be interview guides and evaluation scorecard, or I don't know if there will be, but that's a lot less likely. So D, E, we need to revisit.
I think D remains, because the board's gonna interview, I'm assuming the board's going to interview finalists and make the
Right.
final selection. The
Yeah.
search firm's not gonna pick the person for us.
We have to be a part of the process.
No, I mean,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
who are the interview teams?
The board members
Board
who are
members.
interviewing.
Those aren't
finalists.
interview teams, that's the board,
That's the board.
which
Right,
is
so we,
indicated in the second bullet.
but we don't need E, right? I think is what you're saying.
Well, we need interview guides. I think they should give us the interview guides and the scorecards.
Okay,
They may not need to do training on bias mitigation.
Yeah, that might be, I don't know. That was that the sticking point with previous,
yes,
that they didn't have any,
yes, it was.
they probably, yeah, I could imagine a lot of people not having in-house capacity for that.
Right,
Yeah.
so what do we mean by support interview teams? What does that mean?
I think now that we're clear on what the process is, I think that I think selection, support and interview logistics needs to be modified. I think you're right. That,
So, if I'm thinking about recruiting in general and what that means, it is, all of the communication. So there's a lot of administrative pieces here that have to happen, right? Scheduling all the people for the interviews.
well, hang on, just like to pause you for a second. So Tracy's saying like, if the process is that there's 3 candidates, let's just say for all intents and purposes, coming forward to the board. I think that Megan's saying, okay, for those 3 candidates, then there's this, that they need to do this part, so I think, they need to tell us a little bit more about what their process is, but I think if our goal is that we have a final selection panel. And then the board interviews those final selection candidates
Mhm.
and makes the decision amongst those, like, top, whatever it is. 3 candidates will say, the goal of 3 candidates or something like that. Then I don't know, like. You know, that's usually there's 3, work that out with the board, but I think Megan's. Trying to indicate here, as if I understand correctly, there's still like a. Administrative process that we need to have, that they would support and need to support it. And so there needs to be scorecards, there needs to be a collection of scorecards and a collection of that information, and then like a
All the
debrief.
feedback, the debriefing.
We did that part ourselves last time, because I was on for that, because the other people had bounced,
Right.
so.
And then I would add, you know, someone who's worked with search firms as a candidate is like, they also do like
I mean,
prep calls
yeah.
with the candidate, you
Yeah.
know, what kind of, what questions do you think you wanna bring, you know, because they're vested in getting a
Making people
successful
more-
placement.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's
So I
not,
think, yeah,
that doesn't belong there though.
but we don't do any of this is, I think what Megan does for her day job is like keeping people warm, making sure that, like, we can't meet that often, so you do need somebody to do this.
Right, but that's,
Yeah.
That's not,
that's not selection,
that's not
supporting interview
reflected.
logistics, that's
I
not
think we
what
need to
that is.
reword it now that we're like saying out loud what the actual process would look like, so. So our intent, it sounds like just saying out loud, is that we have a final panel of like 3 people. roughly.
Yeah, that,
And so we can say final panel of like roughly 3 candidates. or
Oh,
something.
candidates, I was
Yeah.
like, of people, what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a final panel.
Yeah.
It's like just a collection of people we meet.
Of us.
that, the distinction being, we don't want them to hand us an ED, we want a slate,
Yeah.
basically.
And then,
Sure.
yeah, and so then the point being that we will.
I have to say, like, I'm really struggling, like, I'm pushing through, but I'm struggling. That we, like, made a big deal about keeping something in that we know we're not gonna get. And will, if no one has it, is gonna be neutral on anyway. And not a big deal about working in union environments, which we know is going to be a major concern. That is so crazy to me. Like, it's so performative, like, why do it?
So I think it's a huge deal for the ED, I don't know if. I think it matters for the search firm to have that experience, I think it's a huge, I don't know if it matters that the search firm have experience with the union. Like
Yeah,
finding somebody in that environment, it's like, say more about why you think it does, because I'm
Because-
interested in.
Because a search firm that has no experience placing people in union environments is not the same as a search firm that has extensive experience placing people in union environments. They ask different kinds of questions, they're gonna source differently, they're gonna be like somebody who works in, I'm making this up. I don't even know if Philadelphia, I would assume Philadelphia Public Library would be a union environment, right?
Sure.
I would assume that, right? Somebody who's used to placing people in large public libraries, there may be somebody who's the exact same size as us, but is not a union environment. That you place them in somebody with the same budget, same size, does not mean that person's gonna be successful here.
Yeah,
And so I think it's kind of nuts that we're like neutralizing something, like we're making. Because we know, are you looking up at Philadelphia's unionized?
no,
But
but it's
that would be funny.
related.
Yeah, but I think it's just like,
okay,
You
that's,
had,
you're making a point.
I follow all that logic and I think it's a really good point. You have referenced a couple times, like there's only so many firms.
yeah,
Do you have the sense that of the only so many firms, that there's meaningful difference among those only limited
No.
number of firms? Of who does or doesn't do
No.
this?
Let me say though, to her point though, about how we offer that experience with DIB, if we think it's gonna be net neutral for all or most of them, we should at least like ask people to show some bona fides on this too, if we. Just to emphasize that we think this experience is important, if everybody gets a 0, fine.
That's fair.
I think Tracy's making a good point that like. Letting people have the opportunity to explain their experience is something that we do consider to be fairly critical to the success of this individual.
Yeah.
I'm convinced that we could add.
Yeah, I
So we could
agree.
add it in the case studies, we could say at least one case study. About placing someone in a unionized work environment.
That is an excellent point. It can also end up being neutral, but it's
I'm
option.
full of them.
You are. You are, but it's right, two things are equal in that way, yeah, okay.
And then we can either say like, we'd like to see at least one case study, or we could do it on the point side and say, we will give a preferential 4 points, 5 points, whatever, for firms with demonstrated experience in placing candidates
Yeah.
in unionized work events.
I like
You can
putting
either
it-
give them points, or you can say, show me what you got and I'll decide how to grade you.
All right.
I wanna talk this through, please.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, we have in relevant experience, this is in the proposal contents. Evidence of successful public library executive searches with at least 3 brief case examples. Name of library or community, timeline in making the placement, we can work on words, of course.
Sure.
And then in terms of, this experience. Placing. A leader. In an environment with union.
In a collective bargaining.
However we wanna say it. Do we wanna say, we're requiring one, or? We will prefer. You know what I mean, that this is preferable to us.
If one is, maybe priority will be given to at least one case example. Of placing, yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah,
Okay.
and that way in our scoring metric, we can say like top points given, with one
Yep.
of those is a case study, yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That, I think that's good. Good job, team, so I think before Tracy started yelling at everybody about. That item, we were trying to figure out.
I feel
It
like,
was a late like.
I feel like it was a blind spot
Yeah.
that we all had. Thank you. Yeah.
Place on, I think it's good, yeah, but for that, we were talking about making sure that the, like, we are all straight on the panel, like, that's what we're asking for, is like a panel of roughly 3 people.
To your, I don't know if it was you or Victoria that said this, like. I wonder how prescriptive we should be. Given, again, that it's gonna be 5 firms, they're gonna decide whether they wanna do it or
Okay,
not.
so like, what's your process, and
Yeah.
like, tell us your process, and then we judge their process?
Yep,
Yeah,
That's
that's,
fine.
yeah.
Okay, so then our scope of work needs to align with that then.
Yeah.
In a way that just lets us figure out what are we scoring, what are our care abouts then on what their process is, how do we know what good is?
yeah.
And, I don't know, do you have anything to say about that, doing this professionally? Like recommendations you would make for what what you think we should be looking for?
We're talking about scope of work right now,
We
yeah.
are,
That's-
yeah.
Okay, section, I want to make sure I was on the right section.
I think launch and alignment's good, sourcing
think
and
so
recruitment's
too.
good, and screening and assessment's good, I think that. Where we start getting into like, I don't know, you tell us what you got is section D.
Mhm.
And E, yeah, and that's like where we're sort of like, just. Roll out what you got and we'll find out, but how are we gonna know what we like and don't like? That's where we need to be.
Well, right now, the way we have this, the training and fairness practices piece, we have that as required,
Mhm.
right? So, it sounds like. This is, I don't know that we need that. Listed as required where everything else is not required. 'Cause
We can take
That doesn't
out.
really make any
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Maybe elsewhere.
Yeah, so, in my experience, I do think it's important that. I'm just thinking about the sustainability and like this process itself, like. We know that there are boards where we have lots of folks who are not really aware of bias or. I think there can be a lot of, bias that shows up in how people decide things.
Oh, yeah.
And so I do think there has to be sometimes you will have people on a board where there is some expertise around that already. But, I do think it's like having a firm that is doing practices like this, I think will be important.
But those aren't the library search firms.
So I think, are those practices also already reflected in what we're asking for the DEIB section? I don't wanna double count anything anywhere.
Mhm.
Cause you're double digging people too.
So are we expecting them to do the board train, Are we expecting the search firm to train the board on anti-bias interviewing? That's just yes or no, an on or
No.
off switch.
No,
Okay, so if we're not, then we don't need to have E at all.
I would like to think that
I think guides and scorecards are really
Guides and
important.
scorecards are.
Guides and
critical to this.
scorecards
are
I
important.
think that's like.
Yeah,
That
okay,
is
that's
a-
fair.
Best
that is a-
practice,
yeah,
like-
yeah, it's a requirement, I think.
that's
for
a
this.
requirement.
And it's,
Yeah, I would
it's
never
how
get
you
my
get
process
to the,
without it.
like, the training stuff in some ways, right? So it's like, if they say, these are the questions you're gonna ask, you're only gonna ask these questions and you're gonna ask them in this order.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep,
oh yeah, for sure, that is training
That's
too.
training
It-
without
is
saying,
training.
here's why you're gonna do it. It's just they're saying, this is how you're gonna do it.
Yeah, and saying that it's like aligned, like them designing the scorecard is aligning it to the competency and. And make.
so is that? So, oh wait. so
Like
it's
I,
no D.
now that we're talking about it this way, it's sort of like, I'm like, you're going to deliver us interview questions and scorecard that align to the competencies.
Uh-huh,
You don't need to train me how to do that.
Yeah.
You're going to do it. And
Right.
that is that is how we're getting the service of
Mhm.
training and fairness.
Yep,
How we're getting a service that is informed by training and fairness.
Mhm.
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, is it the word training that's giving us pause? Or should we just call it fairness practices?
I wouldn't call it training or fairness practices.
What would you call it, Tracy?
Um. Interview support. Or interview guides and evaluation. Cause that's really what it is, right? You're
Yeah.
just saying, please provide a scorecard
Mhm.
so that we can evaluate those 3 people.
Assessment and evaluation practices.
Yeah, or something like that.
because basically what those things do is create a structured interview process and are in place to mitigate bias.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
In
maybe.
theory.
Maybe, let's hope.
Let's hope. Hope springs eternal.
I mean,
So do we need
Optimists.
selection support and interview logistics? Cause it sounds like that's the question piece here. I mean, I think support on, I don't know that the firm is gonna be helping negotiate an offer, but I don't know. I've seen that done different ways in different places. What do you all think?
When I hear, when
I'd like to have them
I would, yeah, because
because if you lose a candidate, right, it's not like,
Just
like I want them. I think of the offer negotiation as part of landing the candidate, it's part of replacing the candidate. It's the
Right.
service of, you know,
I mean, like we said,
replacing the candidate.
yeah, and they're doing the communication around that.
Plus, they're part of their ability to like keep candidates warm. is
Yes,
being
that's
able to
part of
say, like,
that.
You're looking for a $500,000 salary, that's not happening. Like, I'm not gonna keep you in this process, I'm not gonna
Right.
get to the point where you can negotiate that,
Yeah.
right, like,
Fair enough.
you know. So I would like them to stay involved in the negotiation process until the negotiation's closed. That doesn't mean that they don't have to be the middle person, but I'd like them to advise us or advise the candidate as necessary. And that's definitely been my experience in other searches, albeit not in library searches. but
Right.
in
This
other
is my
searches.
experience also, and
Yeah,
I was at research.
I mean,
And you know, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it says support the board. They're not necessarily making, I mean, yeah. They're facilitating the communication and yeah, that's what I think of it as being.
And then I know there's a question about the interview teams through all phases of selection. So
We aren't gonna have that happening this time around, right?
Yeah.
no,
So do we need,
But realistically, there will be interview teams,
Of board members.
there won't be like 9 people interviewing one person. Or it could be, and that's a
Why?
team.
That's what
Or
we.
could be,
we did
yeah,
that.
I guess so, yeah, in the final round last time.
Because
Yeah.
we're only
Is that-
talking about.
could we just say support the board through all phases of
Yes.
selection?
Yes, yes. Oh, thank you.
You mean what I said like 20 minutes ago? That exact thing? Is that what you mean?
So you were like, well,
I
it's
missed
just
it, Tracy, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Tracy. All right, so I think we're good there then.
That means I need a stone.
Please do.
We got
They're
a
really
dish
good.
down.
Nice.
Yes, there's.
I didn't know
there were. Oh, I said this before you guys came in. They might, they either have raisins or cranberries in them. They're incredibly good.
I already done that. I gotta go.
I don't know what that is.
Okay, do we feel good now about the scope?
No, it's probably cranberry and then,
Oh.
like, I don't know what the number letters mean.
Are we good on scope?
Yes,
yes.
I'm good on scope.
Do we want to talk about the term of contract and guarantee?
Did you add that, or is that?
Almost.
No,
Section 4.
oh, 4.
Yeah.
Oh.
Contract.
I think maybe we just need to clarify that completion of the hiring process. The hiring process is like. Yeah, but. Is it standard, we think what that is?
I mean, we can define it however we want, you know, a lot of this to me shows up in the contract you sign with somebody, right? So I don't know in an RFP that.
I don't
we
know
could
that it needs
get
to be spelled out that granularly, right?
specific, because we're also
Yeah.
asking them to talk about their process. And
Right.
Yeah.
I think they would for that, you
The
know.
firm must
And then the
have,
next bullet says, assume that you'll run the process
Yeah.
until someone's hired. And provide a guarantee to rerun.
Uh-huh.
If they're in the role less than 1 year.
That's pretty standard, yeah, yeah,
Great.
I'm fine
If
with
you
that.
recall, that was an issue with the previous firm.
Yeah,
I was
just gonna say
I will say that some firms don't do it fee-free if they're in the firm, they have other discounts, so I would say.
Or none at all.
Tell us what your discounts
If
are.
we're requiring it be fee-free, then I think it's fee-free, but I would say, or guarantee. Like, or to provide the service guarantees to rerun the process if the candidate stays in the role for less than 1 year. Something like that, but unless we just want to hear what their terms are. That might vary by firm.
That's fair.
So how about this? Firm must assume they will run the process until someone is hired and provide provide a service guarantee. Not a service guarantee. It's been a long week. To
Yes.
run the process if the hired candidate stays in the role for less than 1 year. That sound good?
It doesn't feel like it was a 4-day week.
Okay, so proposal contents. We talked about organizational description.
So is any of that negotiable? Cause some firms run different terms. I don't remember what the 3 firms that responded before had been, and it was a quirky timeline and all that stuff
Yeah.
too, but. Do we wanna say anything like? Basically, we're expecting there to be some guarantees here and that's what we're trying to address, but. At the end of the day, are we flexible about their pricing model and?
How about, and options?
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah, I
the
think
firm
we
must
like
assume they will run the process until someone is hired and provide options for a service agreement.
Yes.
That sounds
perfect.
good.
Yeah.
Tell us
Right,
what
'cause
your,
in our evaluation, we might say, oh, someone's fee is X, but they're providing a 1 year
Yeah.
guarantee versus someone's fee is lower, but it's
Yeah.
a 90-day
Yeah.
guarantee.
right, that's fair.
Yeah,
Cool.
and this is like one of the value differentiators between different firms anyway, so,
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm.
Okay.
Proposals should include, but.
So I think we talked through our proposal contents pretty well. We didn't exactly agree on pass-fail gate, I would say. So we talked about the demonstration of public library executive search experience.
Mhm.
We also talked about providing some sort of a track record for that.
Yeah, like, can I just pause for a
Yeah,
minute now?
totally.
I wouldn't interrupt you. The reason we had this last time and we were so serious about it was because we had such a reduced timeline. And we didn't want to go back and forth with questions, so this was a way to like, just say,
Oh,
provide this stuff up front or you are out, because we're not
Got
going
it.
back and asking for cleanup stuff. So as people are thinking about what's in the quote pass fail gate, this is basically like, what is our threshold of like, you are not serious about this, you're out. Versus where we might go back and ask somebody for some further information, or maybe not, like, we don't even have to have a pass fail gate.
True.
when you're scoring, that's why we did it last time.
I think we should definitely have it. Especially since we know that there's gonna be new board members
Yeah.
Mhm.
participating in this
That's fair.
process.
It's also just kind of like,
I think it
Basic
allows for
stuff.
consistency,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
fairness in the process.
you just wanna make sure people give you a complete package, so like, what is a complete package? That's the pass fail gate, but.
Right.
That said, it doesn't have to be all of these things, and you could go back to somebody who otherwise had a good package to say, hey, you skipped this, we don't know why, or this isn't as complete as we would have liked. Because when you do have a pass fail gate, everything needs to be really tight. Last time I thought it was really tight, and people came back with some pretty good questions about like,
Totally.
I don't quite understand this or whatever, so.
So a couple of thoughts. So one is, if, to have a pass fail gate, I think for the. A little bit over accommodating, but like having in the RFP, like a note that says like, note. Proposals that do not meet the following criteria will not be evaluated, and just like restate, like you must show these things. Two, in this pass fail gate, we say demonstrate public library executive search, but in some of the sections above, we don't specify public library, we say library.
I clean that up, yeah.
So just making sure that if it has to be public library, and we had a reason for that before, right, which was we were saying it is a different.
A different fee.
Academic, it's
Yeah.
different, research library is different. So just making sure that's consistent, and then. My third and final comment is that if on gating, is that maybe we describe a structured bias mitigated evaluation approach out, given the conversation we had.
Mhm.
Take that out as a
Yeah.
pass fail.
Take that out as a pass fail,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
And what was the agreed location terms? That was,
That they
For the interim.
understood that they knew that this was
Evanston.
that it's in Evanston.
got
And
it.
that's an
Can
in-person
be
job.
like, yeah, in person, Evanston can be remote, yeah. I think those are all important things and fine.
But maybe that was more important for the interim because
Right.
because it was like a short, we were like, this
Yeah.
isn't like a fractional,
right,
you
right. I
could,
think
you
it's
could phone
obvious
it
then,
in.
yeah.
I think we could leave it out, because
I
it's,
think we could probably take it.
I think
And
it's
pretty
That's a
clear.
good example of some of the things that we were like, we think it's pretty clear that they provided it, but maybe they never said it like very explicitly. And
Yeah.
so you have to really define, this is like a government RFP, and if you kick somebody out for pass fail, you have
You have
to
to be
really.
clear as
you have to be very
Yeah.
clear, yeah.
And
And
that's what
we
I'm saying,
have
pass
in the-
fail gate stuff is really like,
If
it
this,
can be playing with fire a little bit, so we need to be serious about it.
in the interim role, it was really important to us that we be clear that it was like, you need to be here for the interim.
Right,
If
right.
It's a
Yeah.
permanent
Yeah.
role. Maybe, I certainly don't know the whole world of libraries, but like. The ED role parameters for recruiting says full-time in-person based in Evanston, like, I don't know that we need them to repeat that back to
Right,
us.
correct,
Mhm.
yeah.
For the
Yeah.
next role.
Right.
Like, I am putting this proposal together, agreeing about.
Yeah,
locating.
yeah.
Already said,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think we can take that, out,
Yeah.
the gating. So that leaves the gating is like,
Public library executive search experience and
Clear
providing a clear fee structure.
Yeah.
Anything else?
and we
want
decided
in there?
references.
The case
Yeah, we were
studies.
gonna, yeah.
Yeah, we
were
want the
gonna
case
So then
study,
change
but we
provide
are
three
going
references
state
to-
somewhere that we had, we hold. the
Yeah, we'll say,
reserve
we want that as a
references.
guarantee.
Change
Like,
the pre-references to, you have to provide your case studies.
The term of contract and guarantees, we have the right to cancel at any time. And that we will be checking references would be another in section 4.
Hold on a
Wait,
second.
hold on, because we're changing.
Too many people talking to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I just wanna get clear on the pass fail gate first.
Yeah,
So for the pass fail gate, we have, firms demonstrating that they have public library executive search experience.
Mhm.
They are providing a clear fee structure, and then Victoria, were you saying that this should also have the, case studies?
I don't know that we should bother reading in the application that doesn't provide the case studies. We were pretty clear that that's part of what a complete package is. But to Michelle's point, would we read anybody's application that didn't give us case studies?
No,
Because there'd be no way to evaluate the
yeah,
application.
like, how would we evaluate?
It would be
them
like, this is
without-
how we do searches, but we won't tell you.
But we won't tell you what we do.
We'll tell you how we do them, but we won't tell you how they went.
Sounds great.
So we don't have to put it in there, it can be, but to Michelle's
Yeah.
point, like, if we need to be clear,
Provided
be clear.
3 case examples. That's what we have for relevant experience
I think-
here. And 3 case examples.
Great.
Sound good? Okay. So we've got that for pass fail, and then, okay, so, Michelle, you were talking about, section 4, okay, let me look at that real quick here, the guarantee piece. So you want here,
Yeah, to add right to cancel RFP, we have the right to cancel and then right to check references.
and do you think that's separate or under
Yeah,
guarantee?
it's under contract term.
Okay,
Or
perfect.
under, or its own thing, whatever. I think under it's a third bullet.
Okay, cool. Right to cancel the RFP and
the
right
to check.
to check references. We're not requiring them to share references with us.
Right.
Okay. So that would be something we reach out to them later. Okay. Okay. The mission, we talked about doing this, you know, potentially doing this the same way as we were thinking about the interim. So proposal sent by email to Katie.
do they do?
For the next month, and then whomever is, I
Whomever.
guess, the secretary, if we're doing this later. Does
Does
that
it,
sound good?
Yeah.
Well,
To the, whoever the secretary
is
is?
the due date before Katie's term ends?
Oh, that's a
That's-
good question.
If it's not, then I would not recommend using Katie's address.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think just saying the library board secretary for now and.
Yeah, we can fill it in
Did-
later.
I don't know if I feel like at one point we had an address.
I was just gonna ask if we have a general.
I was about to ask that too earlier.
Word
Did we
at-
talk about that? Or was that a fever dream?
Like, do we have an
General
info
address,
at
like library board.
board?
Yeah,
at
like,
EPL board
When
at,
you did this, the previous permanent ED search, was it sent to a certain individual or was it sent to a?
no, it was a collective mailbox.
I believe it doesn't exist again, but we can request one.
Okay,
How long will it take? To get it.
no, it's still, well, it was library director search at cityoфevanston.org.
there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Google autofill.
Is that
Okay,
still?
And we can test it right now.
Yeah.
Good idea, test it out, see what happens.
Library.
Message
Director.
to
It's
this
still
week.
live, everybody. There you go.
Is it?
Is
Go
it?
to-
Live, yeah, it comes up. Library. it's
Yeah,
done,
that's how I
done.
found it.
Yeah, oh.
There we go.
I was like,
It
LIB,
auto-completed.
let's see what autofill comes up with.
Well, see where it
So I
goes.
just test
Well,
messaged
I
it.
don't know where it goes.
Yeah, did we get, I didn't get an
I
email.
just sent it, so see
Oh.
what happens next. I just sent a test message.
Oh, I got it.
Oh, you did?
I got hers, yeah.
Oh, I got it.
All right, there you go.
Still active.
So I can make sure.
So we can
that
just check the
that
You got mine
members.
too, everybody.
Correct.
Great. So go to the trustees.
yes, I did, yeah.
Great.
I
Library.
think it's hysterical that I didn't get it.
Michelle, you know what's wild? Michelle, I just got yours.
It goes to the trustees, I think.
So it goes to everybody.
I think it must be
Yeah.
assigned to the
It's
trustees.
just signed to the
So
trustees.
there's- Okay.
Please forget it. Yeah.
Oh,
You didn't get
yeah,
it
and
yet?
then I got an auto response, just FYI, I got an auto response as the person who sent the message. You probably got one too, Michelle. Well, this is an automated response system mailbox is monitored. If your email is not related to RFP submissions, you should receive a response in 48 hours. If you are responding to the RFP, note we will be receiving responses until 3/9/23. We need to update this
I wrote that.
and review submissions. So we just gotta figure out how to
There
get
it
it,
is.
to get in there and change the auto reply.
I think it's in groups, now that I think about it.
Um,
Groups.gmail.com, maybe?
There we go.
I just sent one to trustees test to see if you get that,
Yes,
Yes.
I
You
got
got
one
it?
from you and I got one from you.
but you didn't get the other ones.
Have now received test. Oh, yeah, one from Michelle, one from Victoria.
I got,
Okay,
I got
I
two
just-
from Michelle.
Those two from
Okay.
Michelle.
Oh, I just got it myself.
Okay. All right, so
That's
like,
fine.
it's assigned to trustees, we're good. Okay, great.
How do you get to Google Groups? Google Groups.
That's one way.
It's in the menu. It's in the like 3x3.
Got it.
Okay,
So
so
now you could go back and look at all the emails that came
Holy hell.
to that. And then the practices.
are we done?
Do we feel good about this?
Yeah, I feel good about
There's
this.
some work that I need to do, or somebody, it doesn't have to be me, around just summarizing more of like the candidate profile that we're talking about here.
Do you have time to finish or do you want me to finish it?
So I can put something together. I think it's really about what do we need to action on tonight, right? Like
Yeah,
with all
so,
of this.
so my thought was that we would be posting it on Monday. And so it's obviously not done, so let me think about what the appropriate motion would be. Well, actually, first, how comfortable are we trusting that Megan will make the appropriate changes? And, I know how you feel about trust, Victoria, but
It's my middle name.
like, how comfortable will we be with Victoria, with Megan making the changes that we discussed today? And then not having to meet again to review them, but that they would just, Heather could post, or Ellen, or whoever,
Whoever can post it.
whoever could
after
post
Megan
it
makes the.
after Megan makes the changes.
I think I'm fine with that.
100%.
Yeah.
You're fine with that?
Yeah.
You're fine with that? No, you're not.
But it
You
looks
wanna
like in a
see-
straw poll that I'd be, that
Could you live with it?
I could live with it,
It is just an RFP, it's not the like,
yeah,
yeah.
I could live with it. Not that I have,
I'm
I
not worried
just,
about that.
I'm fine with it.
No, I understand.
Personally.
We know you well enough at this point to know this is just Esther.
Right.
That's 100%.
I'm glad that is the way.
Okay, so then how quickly could you turn it around?
Mhm.
Sorry, that I could-
No, I was like, wait.
So I think, just summarizing this, it seems like really we're looking at the key responsibilities lower and the competencies lower, right? The minimum requirements, I think we're fine with. There's a
Mhm.
little bit of just language that I wanna adjust around,
We're
collective
really.
bargaining,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. So I think, I should be able to, be done with this, in the next few days.
Okay,
So the idea would be to post the updated edited version
yep.
Monday if we can.
It-
Is that?
So could you do, like, if she did it,
Or
or
is
the
it that I
5-day thing
send
is still
it,
okay.
yeah, should I just send it on Monday and then it gets posted as soon as it can be? What's gonna work best
what works for you?
administratively?
Post whenever it's ready to the website, that's what we're.
Yeah.
doing
Okay.
the RFP.
Want to post it, I have I can post it on LinkedIn on behalf of the library, and you can post it on the website. Is there other
Excellent.
two
Okay.
avenues you're going to be sending?
Got it.
Not off the top of my head.
Like with the email.
So maybe we need to do a press release around. But people won't know.
Right, yeah.
Even if it's just like organically, that.
No. Organic or organic, we want all the chemicals. We want all the chemicals.
Okay.
So
Oh, that's what I'm trying to avoid.
do we have a press release that we previously wrote?
Probably.
Let's do it.
Oh my
Press
gosh.
release.
Are we not just using the same distribution method that we used last time when we did the interim?
Well, this is a bigger deal. This is like, we're hiring and.
We want slightly
More people.
yeah.
While some folks are thinking about that, who has access to update the auto reply on this library search?
None of us.
Who
I just
does?
tried to do it.
IT, but it might. I won't get a response from them until Monday. so
Okay.
we would wanna
Post it until it's clear.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
The other question would be, does it need to be directly to one person versus, every RFP sent to
Sorry.
all of us?
The last thing I would bring up on this is that we need a deadline and we need
That's what.
a are we fielding questions or not fielding questions?
Oh,
Because,
accurate.
we need to figure out an equitable way for handling that, and I recommend not entertaining questions because.
We don't have capacity.
Yeah, Tracy already said there's just a small field of,
Yeah.
likely responders, and that's a lot of administrative overhead for us.
Mhm.
So it's just sort of like, read what we have, best responders, that's like a level playing field for everybody, interpret what's there. And.
So
we
we,
are,
and then we need a due date,
but we
because the
need to
due
say
date
that.
also goes in the
Suggested,
Yeah.
email thing.
And the due date should align with like the overall plan to score it. Pick.
So let's have a looky-loo at the calendar, shall we? So Monday is.
the 31st?
No, the
The
first.
first, OMG.
Hooray. So, let's see. 1, 2. So 2 weeks obviously would be the 15th. Wait, where are we at the?
17th is already
And
the
that is our meeting.
meeting. So if you're trying to do this, are you trying to pick by the 17th? Is that the plan?
Yes.
It's earlier than anticipated. So do you want to use the management committee? I know Arepa's already off, but
I think for efficiency's sake, it should just be on the regular board agenda.
I,
If we make the due date noon Monday,
Yeah,
and the responses are going to the library director search, which means all trustees are getting it.
yeah,
So then as soon as something comes over, you can score it, keep it to yourself.
Mhm.
yeah,
And that means that anything that comes in noon Monday, we have Monday night, Tuesday to score it, and then we can discuss at the board meeting on the
I
17th.
propose the deadline's the 12th, and that gives people the weekend to do it, and,
Yeah.
they'll probably come in on the 12th.
yeah.
But, yeah, so deadline 12th. Everybody does have access to reviewing them as they come in, but we need a scorecard also worked up like ASAP, which I'm happy to.
I think you
translate.
should do the process part, cause you did it before.
You did it
Okay.
before, you can
So I
probably
think
just
that it
repurpose
needs, like,
what was done
specific
Clean
before.
version of this, if you send it over, I'll do the scorecard this weekend,
Yeah,
and I'll put the
and like
scorecard
the
back into the,
process, you know,
yeah,
'cause
I'll
you
put
did
it
it.
back into Google Docs again like it was last time.
If we're concerned about the auto reply, is there a reason why we shouldn't put the email as library-trustees? Because if they send it for that ghost email, they're gonna get unless.
So we're getting.
Well, that's what it made me think of it. The only reason anyone would send anything is if they have a question. So we're saying no question is entertained. There's no real reason anybody should be emailing that address until they have a ready packet, which is not gonna be Monday.
That's accurate. No, you're right. Everyone, thank you.
So that's why I
Yeah.
was trying to say, we're not gonna say in there, no questions will be entertained, just send your completed packets to this address, then like, great, we'll see them in a week and Heather's.
And if
got
they send a
there.
question and get the response, then they're not.
And
reading.
our email addresses are on the website, so
Yeah.
if somebody wanted
Yeah.
to reach
Make it
us,
process,
they can
yeah.
reach it, and then we can have our way of responding.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
Okay.
so does someone have a press release with all this language that we're talking about, or do we need to have somebody like build?
I just find it hard to believe that we never did
Ellen,
that.
I'm sure we got it in there.
I just don't see it.
You already found it?
I have the old one, but I wasn't here for the previous search, so,
Oh.
I can have.
What did we do
seen it.
recently when we did the interim search? Did we do anything? We just sent out an email? I remember
No, I
preparing
don't
something.
remember.
I remember.
I remember seeing the press release.
Um,
Here it is,
Okay,
Found it?
yeah.
What?
The Evanston Public Library Board of Trustees issued a request for proposals for an executive search firm to guide a search for a new library executive director. The board is seeking a firm to conduct a wide-reaching search and provide a slate of qualified candidates for the position, which will oversee an award-winning public library serving 77,000 residents. The board has been engaged in a thoughtful and deliberate approach to search for a new executive director, including soliciting feedback from community stakeholders and anticipating the hiring of a search firm. A request for proposals is available on the library director's search page, which is linked. Proposals are due by blank. Proposals and questions may be submitted to library director search at cityofelvanston.org.
What's the title? What's the name of that document?
I'm picking it up off of actually like a place where it's posted out in the world.
oh,
Oh,
Great.
Okay.
And
wanna
that's
do-
And it
from
was
the, that was
February
the,
16th on 2023.
okay, that was for the executive director.
Yeah.
Do you wanna just use
You
that
want me
then?
to-
Yeah, that's fine.
Who should I send it to?
Tracy.
Yes. I'll edit it and then, send it to you. Thank you.
Tracy.
Great. So we're all aligned on everything?
Ooh, that's so scary.
That does.
Everything. Everything.
Okay, so I don't need any of this up here.
Oh,
Just sign.
You need to motion, do you need to?
Do we need a motion?
I move to approve the RFP. And post it on Monday. June 1st. And have a deadline of June 12th.
Second.
I'm sorry, but we're.
By 5 o'clock PM on June 12th.
wait until there's a second, and then you,
Second.
Yeah.
By 5 p.m.
is there any discussion?
Yeah, no, yeah, point of clarification, when you say, the approve the RFP, do we mean the RFP with the revisions as discussed?
Thank you, Esther. Good point. I mean, the RFP with the revisions as discussed. Nice.
No, you didn't do a point of information.
You did,
Cause didn't somebody just, did you, was it you, Victoria, that said nobody ever says point of information? No, Heather said, nobody ever says point of information.
We need a, so I've got on my, thing here,
Yes.
there's like a, one that goes. One that's like, Robert's rule.
So the motion on the table is approve the RFP with revisions as discussed and post on Monday, June 1st with submission deadline by 5 p.m. on 6/12.
Yes,
Moved by Mills, seconded by Shire. Dada's gone.
call the roll.
So it is Fultz,
Aye.
Huggins, I, Mills.
Aye.
Shay.
Aye.
Shire,
Yes, I.
Wallen.
No.
Hey,
Boy,
this
I've
is
never-
just I love you too.
Man, you're great. You are literally one of my favorite people on earth, literally.
Okay, now what?
We had another.
So we have another item.
The first Jedi.
No.
Get
Okay,
ready.
what time is it? Awards.
You live here now, accept it. Pursuant to 5 Illinois compiled statutes, I move that the Evanston Public Library Board convene into an executive session to discuss an agenda item regarding personnel. This agenda item is a permitted subject to be considered in executive session and among enumerated exceptions under the Open Meetings Act. These exceptions are C1, C2, and are set forth as follows. A public body may hold closed meetings to consider the following subjects: the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity, or collecting negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. Is there a second?
Second.
Yes.
We had a new business item interim ED. Are we moving into executive session before we discuss that?
Yeah, I should have amended the agenda. I forgot about it. I forgot about the order.
I thought we did it.
We
That was like the first-
swapped the order.
We swapped the order.
Eliminated
But I
that.
should have made it after executive session.
The interim ED item is what we're discussing in an executive session?
Yes, but there's a public component that has to be there too.
So
So.
do we vote no now to not, stay out of
Is there any
executive session?
discussion? Let me think.
We haven't gotten it.
We're in discussion because did somebody second it?
I did.
Yes,
You did
Esther
second
did.
it. Okay, so let me think about this for a second.
It's like, renege on that.
Yeah. Can she rescind or?
Yeah,
You can rescind.
Can we just
Yeah.
rescind?
so. Man, why does my brain not remember how to do that?
In
You know,
terms-
actually, we don't have to call the roll. You can just say, oh,
Fails.
I'm tabling it.
Tabling
I'm
it.
tabling this item to come back to item B, interim ED.
Nice, then we don't have to reread all of it.
Yeah, because that's exactly.
That's what I was trying to avoid
I'm
too.
like, what is the word? Table.
Okay,
So I'm tabling that motion, no discussion now, to go back to item B.
So you're moving to motion, you're moving. We have to take a
We have to vote
motion
to
on the
table.
table, right? Okay.
Yes.
oh, blah, blah, blah.
That's what I was clarifying.
Tabling the motion.
Tabling the motion to convene into executive session.
Okay, so you made that motion, I will second that.
Thank you. And then we don't have to call the roll. We can do a
Voice
voice
vote.
vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Are there any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion carries.
Okay,
So now we're back on the appropriate B. So,
to amend,
so I'll entertain a motion to move item B to after executive session.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
second,
Okay,
Shay motion. Huggins seconded. Okay, motion to amend the agenda so that item B is now after an executive session. False.
aye.
Huggins, aye. Mills,
Aye.
Shay,
Aye.
Shire,
Ah.
Wallen.
Aye.
Okay,
Okay, so, oh no, I forgot what you say when you undo
Label.
What? You say,
Take from the table.
take from the table.
take from the table. So I'll entertain a motion to take from the table. Our executives are convening into executive session.
Second.
No,
Oh, I'm sorry. I move that we take from the table convening into executive session.
Second.
we
Shay,
can do voice vote.
all right, voice vote.
Yep, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries.
All right, motion carries. We are.
Okay, so now,
Brenda, stop.
Executive
Not a
yes, please.
Right here.